So basically, law enforcement being themselves, they said they were just like they put a newsfeed article in my newsfeed. It said, "If you heard what he just said right now, you've just been scammed." And so that scam thing was a little, coming out of the scam artists, were literally scamming every girl out there. I was like, "I'll take you up on that challenge. Meet you in Moscow, Russia. I'm going there for 25 days. You've got a 30-minute challenge. You do it, it's on you. You don't do it, it's on you." So I just go to Moscow, Russia after that for 25 days. And like they were kind of scared, obviously, because they were running their mouths and they knew it was like Moscow, Russia. The entire world is not only watching. If they don't do it, some country could like turn off the brain savant inhibitions and everything, and I'd be able to use my brain savant for 30 minutes, revealing to the entire world what the story was really all about. So I waited there in Moscow, Russia for 25 days, never went outside of my hotel room. And so they did do a test on November 14, 2025, only to check to see what the chances are, how bad their nightmare would be. Not only did they find out that I had photographic memory, innovation, and focusing, but they also found out that my powers also increase over time. Well, what happened was, yeah. So they do this every time. They like they get really envious of like girls that they told about my brain savant. I would never tell anyone about. I don't even know anyone. I never even talked to them. That these they get envious over it. So recently they did this, and they were getting envious over this, and I gave them an oath. And I told him, if you do a 30-minute test and I'm anything short of a Kim Peek Rain Man, I'll put it under paper. Signature that under oath, I'm saying it, that I'll put it on paper that you guys ran an investigation and that I was a liar, because my entire theory against you, claiming that the only thing that this is about is my brain savant, is completely false. And I'll put this under paper, giving you a complete victory in 30 minutes time. With you just doing a simple brain savant test with me. Obviously, law enforcement didn't do it. Whatever artificial intelligence has predicted happen in that end of that 1 minute test is obviously what's going to happen at the end of the 30-minute test. And I'm not psychic enough to know what artificial intelligence said about the 1 minute test, which means that I'm telling the truth. And law enforcement knows this really well, because they tested it out for 6 hours on that flight on August 9, 2022. So law enforcement basically, they know. So basically these were all like, so they like, this is the second time they're running their mouths. And in Russia, it's like after November 14, 2025, they just didn't, nothing from them after that. Scam artists, this and that, nothing. I was just sitting there in my hotel room in Moscow, Russia, looking at the 3 Golden Globes of the Kremlin that I sent a video of to my mother every single day. I look at those 3 Golden Globes of the Kremlin every single morning. I'd wake up in my hotel room in Russia, waiting for them to do their challenge in front of the entire world watching. Well, no scam artists, nothing over there after November 14th. They were scared that if they ran their mouths, someone would actually turn off and administer the 30-minute brain savant test, revealing to the entire world what this was really all about. Due to which they never said one word afterwards. I had the Vika video app open, which is like YouTube. They had their videos put up on there. No scam artists, nothing after November 14th. They didn't run their mouths after that because they were scared that some government might administer a 30-minute test. Well, anyways, right now I've given it to them under oath. All you've done since 2001 is run sex games with Uncle Joey's in-laws, which is why you've been so forced to run it with Uncle Joey recently. And yeah, all you've done is money fraud. Well, yeah, tell you what, I'll put it under oath on video for the entire world to watch. I'm anything short of Kim Peek Rain Man at the end of the 30-minute test. You win your case fair and square. I'll put it under writing that my entire theory against you was false, since my brain savant potential and powers do not exist, which means that you have run an investigation. You would want that, wouldn't you? Well, they're still not going to do it. I could make any deal with them in the world. They're not going to do it because they're losing control of these girls right now, and their sex addiction is showing. Well, that is what I had to talk about in this video today. Basically, the last narrator they had was Junaid. And Junaid and law enforcement have a common goal together. And that goal is basically sex addiction. And so basically, yeah, Junaid would basically, law enforcement would help Junaid run after these girls. Now, these girls, by the way, were told about my brain savant. They only knew me, and they were told about my brain savant, and they were basically, these girls were basically trying to come meet me, and I didn't say anything bad to them. I just said, look, just wait till my brain savant gets freed, and when I get started on my work, then we can meet. Like, I could talk to people after that. It's not a problem. Just wait till my brain savant gets freed is all I said. Yeah, I didn't say anything mean to anyone. Well, anyways, yeah, so Junaid and law enforcement have been running their sex scheme on these girls. And every single time Junaid would get rejected by them, he would basically go into a fit and have law enforcement threaten me to break my car. Well, after May 25th, 2026, what happened was there was an elementary school teacher I had, and she just wanted to meet me basically to, like, after my brain savant would get freed so that I could tell her and her family, because I knew her family when I was like 11 years old. And basically I knew her and her family. Like, I used to see her husband there. Like, he'd go come. Anyways, I don't want to put too much details in there, but yeah. So basically, she just wanted to ask me about my brain savant after it would get freed, like how everyone else was curious. And Junaid basically was begging her for sex, and her son is only about 2 years younger than me. I don't want to put too much details in there, but I know this because he was in elementary school the same time I was. So basically, Junaid kept begging her over and over and over again, and she kept saying no, no. And in the end, what happened was, like every single day he would beg her, and so she kept saying no. So I think like around May 25th, 2026, she, like, her son, who's only about like 2 years younger than me, called the police on Junaid, and Junaid got in, like, I guess obviously he got in trouble, but that's also humiliating. Her son is only 2 years younger than me, something like that, and like they're getting annoyed by him continuously begging people for sex. You have to remember the fact that Junaid doesn't know who these people are. These are people who knew me, and they found out about my brain savant and wanted to know me even more and about my brain savant, which means that Junaid was using law enforcement to try to get their contacts so he could try to run after them and then beg them for sex or be able to sleep with them. And obviously people in their families get annoyed and irritated. Well, her son called the police on Junaid around May 25th, 2026, and those threats that were coming through law enforcement, they became absolutely real. And so there were certain things that law enforcement basically broke for Junaid in order to get revenge for him getting rejected by a woman that I have nothing to do with. Like, I'll show you this charging outlet. Do you see it? It's got nice USBs on the side. It's got a nice thing right over here. This whole thing, law enforcement broke it using their tools as a revenge for Junaid getting rejected by a woman that I have nothing to do with. They also broke, let me show you. So this is my TV, and basically, yeah, this Fire Stick. This is a new one. The old one, Junaid had them break just to cause me emotional pain and distress so that I would, suffer over this, like how Junaid and people in law enforcement. It's not funny breaking things. And I know this for a fact because when I was writing about this in the journal, they made this adapter right over here for my laptop not be able to work, due to which I was not able to post that journal all night. It's basically vandalism. And except for these two things, they also broke the front and bottom part of my car as well, out of anger and to get revenge for Junaid getting rejected. And Junaid basically has nothing that I never did anything bad my entire life. But Junaid would basically take these talking points from law enforcement and try to use those against me. Things that law enforcement cannot say themselves. Like things like Uncle Joey, who's law enforcement's own BFS, would say something around me when I was a child, since the war occurred when I was a child. And law enforcement would basically just give it to Junaid and be like, Junaid, you say this. since we can't say it. And Junaid would basically say whatever Uncle Joey might have said around me when I was a child could be considered bad, maybe against the country, since there was a war going on at that time. And Junaid would basically say that, even though I didn't know Junaid at that time when I was a child, till like decades later he married my sister. And so yeah, and so basically, um, out of anger and hatred that Junaid was getting rejected and fear that my brain savant would get freed, Junaid takes the talking points that law enforcement cannot say themselves, since they're not going to say that Uncle Joey said something around me when I was a child, since the war occurred when I was an 11-year-old child. Um, law enforcement can't say that themselves, because then the courts are going to be like, look, Hassan's not been near Uncle Joey since he was a child. His mother made a promise that she fulfilled the moment he became a slightly mentally mature enough child. The facts and evidences show that Hassan has not seen Uncle Joey since he was a child, despite you law enforcement trying to force him to meet Uncle Joey for your sex scheme ads. So you cannot claim right now that your BFF Uncle Joey, whom Hassan has not even met since he was since he was a child, and his mother's phone conversation from Russia clearly shows why he hasn't met him since he was a child, despite you harassing him, torturing him to force him to meet Uncle Joey for his sex scheme ad. He hasn't met Uncle Joey. So today you cannot say, law enforcement, that when Hassan was 11 years old, Uncle Joey might have said something around him that could have been considered bad, even though Hassan has not met Uncle Joey, just like Hassan's mother promised law enforcement she would do when he was an 11-year-old child. And you have been BFFs with Uncle Joey from that time till right now without caring a bit about anything. So you can't claim, law enforcement, right now that it's Hassan's fault that when he was an 11-year-old child, Uncle Joey said something around him when he was a child being adult supervised by Uncle Joey, when his mother had already told law enforcement when he was an 11-year-old child that she would remove him from every setting, and his mother has never been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life. So law enforcement can't use this talking point themselves, because I haven't seen Uncle Joey since I was a child. I hadn't even gained mental maturity. At that time, when I did see him, it was only because he had adult supervised me, and after which time I never saw him. After I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity to be able to stay at home alone when my mother went to work, just like how she said on February 15th at 8:30 p.m. I haven't seen him for decades now. And law enforcement have been BFFs with Uncle Joey for decades, to the point that they would help him with sex scheme ads at funerals in November 2023, so aggressively that foreign statesmen started quoting Uncle Joey, and I knew right away that they had been BFFs since 2001. Shortly before my mother removed me from every setting there was, whether good or bad, that was no longer needed, because I no longer had to be adult supervised. Didn't even have to leave home anymore, just like how she said on February 15th at 8:30 p.m. So law enforcement can't use this talking point themselves, because this talking point, it would just be like, Hassan's mother made a promise, she kept that promise to law enforcement. He was never seen near Uncle Joey ever again since he was a child, not even mentally mature enough yet. You law enforcement have been with Uncle Joey since 2001, till right now, running sex schemes and money fraud with him. Why have you been doing that? So law enforcement cannot use this talking point. Instead, they give it to Junaid, and Junaid would repeat it in the court and say that Uncle Joey said something bad around Hassan when he was an 11-year-old child, so that's Hassan's fault as a child, even though he wouldn't say the entire story. That my mother had already made a promise to law enforcement when I was an 11-year-old child, and she fulfilled that promise the moment I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, never to be around Uncle Joey or anyone else ever again. Junaid obviously will not say the entire sentence. He would only say half of it. Uncle Joey said something bad around Hassan when Hassan was 11 years old child, since the war occurred when he was 11 years old. It's Hassan's fault, not Uncle Joey's fault. Even though Hassan was a child, Uncle Joey wasn't. It's not law enforcement's fault who are running sex schemes and money fraud with Uncle Joey right now as we speak, and try to blame everything on Hassan without ever saying that the entire sentence, which is that my mother had already talked to law enforcement when I was an 11-year-old child, letting them know that she only had to let me be adult supervised with any random person who would willing to watch me for free till I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity as a child. Not saying the entire truth. Only out of extreme envy that Junaid keeps getting rejected by these girls. And let me tell you why Junaid keeps getting rejected by these girls. Junaid and law enforcement were basically running a fraud and a scam. These girls that law enforcement told about my brain savant, and I never contacted and never even tried to, Yeah, to the point that there were times when some of the girls try to find me at places, and I would tell them, "No, I cannot go to Walmart right now, and I will not see you there." Yeah, y- I never went for any of these girls. Never tried to contact them, and also I just had to add in there, since I am talking about girls right now, that Kelly from Law Enforcement just about 3 nights ago was putting up ads for herself, and then the ad for Food Line, basically showing and saying that I've got braids now. Do you want to come see me at Food Line? Um, yeah, it's like the ad with the white girl with the braids, and then there would be the Food Line ad, and she was just basically saying that I've got braids now. Do you want to come see me at Food Line tonight? Which obviously I said no to, and I didn't go to Food Line that night. But yeah, this is the kind of stalking that's been going on. I never tried to contact any of these girls, by the way. And same Kelly, I saw it outside the Russian consulate. Her hair was like all over the place. But yeah, um, and so, um, yeah, so basically, Junaid was getting rejected by these girls. And what was going on was he was blaming it on me and saying, "Oh, well, why are they running after Hassan? He doesn't even run after them." And so basically, he was getting really angry about it, sending me these threats to break my car, which is now broken. The front under part has been broken by law enforcement in Junaid to try to get revenge from me for him getting rejected by these girls that I have nothing to do with. So basically, on July 3rd, 2026, 3 days ago, again, even after my elementary school teacher's son called the police on him on July 3rd, 3 days ago, another girl called the police on him, Janed, for him and law enforcement harassing that girl over and over again. She ended up calling the police on him. And today is July 6th, 2026. And even today, some girl called the police on him. So it really does show you that Janed and law enforcement have been doing this due to their sex addiction. And they have been trying to use talking points, any point that they can, whether it makes sense or not, to try to get to me, harass me, in order to get revenge and to make sure that my brain savant cannot get freed. Junaid and law enforcement are only doing this due to their sex addiction. And even on the night of June 19th, it had an ad on there. It said "Let's work together," Chevrolet, and it had M&T Bank. It said "Together" on there. Basically, their sex addiction and their rejections were so bad that they were basically asking me to help them with their sex addiction ad, basically to scam other people's daughters. And the way they would do this is like Junaid would basically go up to some girl who's someone else's daughter, by the way, and no one wants their daughter scammed like that. And he would say that I'm a CEO of a company, and someone would go and tell the girl like he actually gets paid this exact same amount my sister gets paid, and he does the exact same work. The only difference is he loses his job like every year. And so basically what happens is yeah, it's pretty sad. It's someone else's daughter, and she's basically not like a sex addict. She's looking for a husband who could provide for her, and they're being scammed by telling them lies. So the girl would be told that he's not a CEO and he's making this stuff up. He gets paid the exact same amount my sister gets paid, does the exact same job. The only difference is he loses his job every single year. As soon as he sees that the girl found out, he tells her everything. I lose my job every year. I get into fights at work every single day. I'm going to lose my job again this year, like how I lose it every single year. I have to get early retirement, like how I almost did have to, and my mother had to convince me not to get it. Blah, blah, blah. All the secrets, everything. Why does he do this? Because he knows that someone told the girl about the CEO thing, and he wants to tell his story before the other person would, to try to see how the girl would respond, to try to like sweet talk her afterwards so that he doesn't lose sex. Basically, scamming other people's daughters the way no one wants their own daughter to be scammed. Truth be told, everyone is, I don't have a daughter, but if I did, obviously, like the guy doesn't show up being a millionaire or a billionaire. Like, like if the guy's like, I'll be a billionaire next month, you're like, come back next month, sort of thing, you know? It's just scam artist behavior. It's just like, mm, it's kind of like if I were to tell a girl, which I never did, and it was law enforcement and their brain scanner, due to which they told everyone. In fact, Miss Dev was told 2 months before I told anyone, even whispered into anyone. She was told mid-June 2023. I told anyone after August 25th, 2023, and even that was only so I could study after I won my case on August 25th, 2023. But if I were to tell a girl that artificial intelligence has predicted my brain savant to get freed and being most rare and profitable in the world, the girl's dad is going to say what? He's going to be like, that's so sweet. Come back when it's freed and you have the money, obviously. That's what the girl's dad is going to say. People are scamming other people. These people, Junaid and law enforcement, are basically scamming other people's daughters, whom they see as easy prey because their parents aren't living with them. And they would basically go up to these girls and tell them stories about themselves that are not true. And even after the girls would find out, they would keep continuously. First, they would tell the entire truth, and then they would try to sweet talk the girl so that they don't lose sex over the truth. And then what they would do is they continue begging the girl, whom they don't even know, by the way. It was just some girl that law enforcement told about my brain savant, and I never went even close to her ever. And yeah, and then that girl, basically after telling her all the truth from his own mouth, Junaid would, like, seeing that she's not interested anymore, obviously, like, and then him and law enforcement would continue begging her all day, night long. Like, you already told her what the truth was. You didn't have to do that. The person who told her about you making the same amount as my sister and doing the same job, and the only difference being you lose your job every year and you almost got an early retirement one time, and yeah, all these things that you didn't have to tell her, you did yourself from your own mouth. And so now, like, what they do is then they try to sweet talk the girl. It doesn't work, and then Jeanette keeps begging her over and over and over and over again till she basically gets sick and tired of him and it, and she calls the police on him. So basically, my elementary school teacher, her son, who's only about 2 years younger than me, called the police on Jeanette around May 25th, 2026, or sometime around there. And right now, it's just like 3 days ago, July 3rd, some girl called the police on him. And then today's July 6th, some other girl called the police on him. It's just continuing, like, over and over again. And it shows you that it's just sex addiction, due to which Junaid and law enforcement are doing this. They are getting revenge from me using these talking points that law enforcement cannot say themselves, by basically using these talking points against me. And yeah, that don't make any sense to begin with, since they will claim, Junaid will claim that Uncle Joey said something around me that was considered even remotely bad when I was a child, I hadn't even had slightest bit of mental maturity yet as a child, not telling the entire story that my mother had already talked to law enforcement about it when I was an 11-year-old child, making a promise that I would never be in any setting where anything even remotely considered bad could be said around me from the moment I would gain slightest bit of mental maturity. A promise my mother kept. Law enforcement never kept their promise to their country, and my mother's never been heard uttering one word considered bad her entire life, and neither have I been present in any setting where anything even remotely considered bad could ever be said around me, just as my mother promised law enforcement she would do when I was an 11-year-old child. From the moment I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, and no longer needed adult supervision, just like how my mother said on February 15th at 8:30 p.m. till this very day today. And they wouldn't tell the entire truth, and Junaid would basically take one talking point, take it and go to court and try to, like, cry about it and be like his brain savant shouldn't get freed, when in fact the real reason is law enforcement and Junaid's sex addiction, where they are basically addicted to sex, and they go around begging women that were just curious to know about my brain savant. And they just wanted to know, like, what is this? How does it work? And when you get it freed and it's working, can you please come and tell us? That sort of thing. Just come meet me at dinner with my family, sort of thing. And Junaid was begging them for sex and saying, can you sleep with me, over and over again. Till basically, yeah, people's kids had to call the police. Her son, the elementary school teacher's son, is only about 2 years younger than me, and he called the police around May 25th, 2026. 3 days ago, July 3rd, some girl called the police on Junaid. Today is July 6th, some other girl called the police on Junaid because he was continuously harassing them to be able to sleep with them. It's to the point that law enforcement wants to provide a girl from themselves in law enforcement for Junaid, and all the girls are too disgusted watching him get rejected over and over again for them to even go sleep with Junaid. And Junaid is basically out of his sex addiction. He broke my things, my charging outlet, my fire stick for my TV, the front under part of my car, out of anger and revenge from him getting rejected by girls that are still trying to come after me. And it's due to that extreme envy that this last narrator, Junaid, his actions have shown the courts very clearly that his motive is absolutely invalid, and that he's only doing this out of envy, shown exactly from him asking law enforcement to break my things that were broken, including my car that was broken after I received threats from him, and now that car's broken, charging outlet's broken, fire stick for my TV's broken, all to cause me emotional pain and distress because Junaid was getting rejected by these girls that are still running after me, and that's not my fault. That's not my fault. I never told the girls to run after me, and I never tried to run after them, ever. Law enforcement's aware of this fact, to the point that Kelly from law enforcement would run after me, and she started stroking my penis from the night of June 7th, 2026, 10 minutes after the artificial intelligence report came out. And basically, yeah. So she's been doing the same exact thing. And on July 3rd, 2026, Kelly sent me Kelly's Blue Book ad on my app, and basically it was just to try to say that if you don't marry me, I will break your car and you'll need a new one. And basically, these aren't marriage requests. These are basically bank robbery requests. You sign a paper that says if you divorce the person, you have to owe them this much money, and things of that sort of nature. Like, no one does that, and I just want to be left alone by all of them. Well, that's not what I made the video to talk about. What I want to say is that basically Junaid is narrating in this trial against me due to this reason and this reason only. He's basically envious of my brain savant. He cannot see these girls coming after me, due to which he would beg these girls to sleep with him instead. And when the girls would refuse, he would make up stories about him being a CEO. And when they would find out, he would tell them the entire truth about him losing his job every year, making the same as my sister, almost getting an early retirement one time, and his mother convincing him not to do so. All these things that he didn't have to share, he shared it so that the other person who told the girl about him not being a CEO could not do so. And so Junaid would basically do this, and then now that the girl, like he'd be running after the girl, and she would say no, she would end up having to be forced to call the police on him. Happened on July 3rd, 3 days ago. It happened again today, July 6th. These people are basically doing this out of extreme envy from these girls that they're not able to chase around. And they are extremely envious of my brain savant. They cannot see these girls chasing me around, and me not even being interested, obviously, because I don't want to get sued. I don't want any troubles. I just want my brain savant in my textbooks, and that's it. I couldn't care less about any girls. And yeah. And so basically, yeah, that's what's going on. And that's why Junaid is basically taking talking points that law enforcement cannot say themselves. Since I have not even seen people like Uncle Joey, in case he ever did even say anything even remotely considered bad around me. Just giving an example. And Junaid would basically take a talking point where Uncle Joey would say something considered bad around me as a child, since I was an 11-year-old child when the war occurred, not telling the entire story about how my mother had already talked to law enforcement. She had already explained that she would take me out of every setting where anything even remotely be considered bad could be said around me from the moment I would gain the slightest bit of mental maturity, and that I was never seen in any settings ever again where anything even remotely considered bad was ever said around me, ever again. Nothing even remotely considered bad ever again. And the entire story would not be told, or the fact that my mother has never uttered one word considered bad her entire life either. Nothing racist, nothing bad, nothing of that sort of nature. And Junaid and law enforcement are telling these stories. They're not telling the entire story. only to try to frame me and make me look bad so that they could have my brain savant locked up due to extreme envy of these girls not sleeping with Junaid, instead calling the police on him and still wanting to run after me. So that's what the entire story is about. And if the courts look at the police reports from not only my elementary school teacher's son calling the police on Junaid before May 25th, 2026, then the girl calling the police on Junaid on July 3rd, 2026, and then another girl calling the police on Junaid today, July 6th, 2026, then the story should be very clear and obvious. Junaid was trying to run after these girls that were coming for me because finding out about my brain savant potential, monetary potential. And Junaid would get rejected by them. And when he would get rejected by them, he would make up stories about him being CEO. The girls would be told the truth. Then he would tell them even more truth about himself. When afterwards he would not be able to sweet talk the girls, basically what would happen is, he would continuously try to force himself on her, and she would call the police. He would get extremely envious, and he would threaten to break my things, which he has now broken through law enforcement, due to which I had to get a new charging outlet, really nice one, a new fire stick for my TV. The front under part of my car has been broken by law enforcement. All of these things only because law enforcement, only because Junaid has been getting rejected by these girls, and they're continuously calling the police on him. And now Junaid wants revenge from me for these girls still liking me, despite me never running after any of them, only due to extreme envy and nothing else. And that's why he's taking talking points that law enforcement cannot say themselves to try to use against me. And the facts and evidences will show this from the police reports filed by this elementary school teacher's son, the girl who called the police on July 3rd, and the girl who called the police today on July 6th, 2026. Thank you.